We're very happy.
You sick bastard.
She may remember you from the party. Do you remember Lawrence from the party?
You should see what he's done to me. I hate you. I wish you were dead.
I love you.
You're a liar!
Oh, I love you.
Liar!
I can do it. I can make you happy.
A restless blonde boy wanders aimlessly around a banquet, clearly out of place. One of the guests suggests he should follow in his father's footsteps and become a surgeon. His mother couldn't care less. Fast forward years later, he's just buried her. And true to that offhand prediction, he's now a surgeon heading straight from the graveside to the operating room. Dr. Alan Harrison had hoped to perform the surgery himself, given that his colleague was supposed to be at the funeral. Kavanagh returns to his mansion and finds himself drifting back to memories of his mother and the string of elderly men she used to bring home. Later, he heads to a bar to celebrate a successful operation with his colleague Dr. Lawrence. They manage to save the hand of an 11-year-old patient. That's when he spots Helen. He freezes, panic rising in his chest, and immediately wants to leave. She's clearly an ex, and clearly someone he never got over, despite already seeing another woman. Before dinner, he decides to go for a run, a route that takes him, not entirely by coincidence, right past Helen's house. He can't bring himself to knock, but he does climb a tree and peer through the window, watching as Helen, down to her bra, sips a cocktail and gazes out at the evening sky. He's perfectly content with the view, until he realizes she's not alone. Whatever happens next, he decides he'd rather not see, and bolts. Not toward home though. He makes it to the nearest phone booth and calls Lawrence, rambling about how to win Helen back. They only slept together once, he admits, but he can't shake her. Lawrence gives him sensible advice: keep his distance and redirect his thoughts toward Anne. The obsessed man ignores all of it and sends Helen a postcard inviting her to his housewarming party. On the way back, he stops again outside her place. Meanwhile, Anne waited all evening for him to come home for dinner. By the time he finally showed up, she was already asleep. Back home, Kavanagh rehearses what he'll say, then finally summons the nerve to call Helen. She grudgingly pulls herself away from her evening activities to answer, then immediately hangs up. Furious at the mystery caller, Helen takes her irritation out on her boyfriend Ray, kicking him out, though not before suggesting he could at least pick up some groceries on his way. Ray leaves in a huff, and Helen, never one to pass up a drink, calls in an order of vodka, lemon juice and pomegranates. Drifting off to sleep, Kavanagh quietly wishes Helen good night in his head. Anne, for her part, slips out in the morning without waiting for her boyfriend to wake up. Kavanagh starts calling around to fill his housewarming party, though it's pretty clear the whole event is just an elaborate excuse to get Helen through his door. Meanwhile, Ray, sporting a see-through shirt and leather trousers, shows up at Helen's place, hoping to drag her out to a bar that evening. She's not interested. She has plans, and besides, she's flying to Mexico tomorrow. She shoos him out again, clearly done with him. Back at Kavanagh's, the apartment fills with guests. He barely registers any of them, hovering anxiously near the door and checking his watch every few minutes. When Helen finally walks in, he's at her side almost instantly. Across the room, a friend assures Anne that a proposal is just around the corner. One has to wonder, who exactly was this whole party thrown for? Helen drifts through the apartment with an air of cool indifference, not giving her host so much as a glance. Another man, Russell, quickly picks up on her energy. He's far bolder than Kavanagh and wastes no time making his move. In a moment of eccentric spontaneity, Helen strips down to her lingerie and decides the garden fountain looks like a perfectly reasonable place to freshen up. Anne watches in bewilderment as this strange woman splashes around in front of everyone, Kavanagh standing nearby looking utterly lost. Helen extends an invitation to Russell for a little after-party adventure. Anne turns to the doctor and asks the question that's been on her mind all night. What on earth was he thinking, inviting this woman? Is he sleeping with her? Russell pulls Kavanagh aside and announces he's leaving, and he's taking Helen with him. Kavanagh can barely hold himself together as he watches them go. On her way out, Helen thanks Kavanagh for the flowers with a smile, then laughs directly in his face. The blonde man looks like he might cry. The next morning, Helen leaves him a voicemail. She forgot her purse at his place and instructs him to bring it to the airport, signing off with a casual mention that Russell says hi. Kavanagh complies, but shows up late. Helen misses her flight and unloads on him, cursing him out in the middle of the terminal. To make things worse, her address book has vanished from the purse. She's furious. Now she'll have to go back to her admirer's house to retrieve it. Kavanagh, suddenly full of hope, decides this is his moment. He'll make her lunch and finally tell her how he feels. Helen, for her part, wants absolutely nothing from him, and feels she made that crystal clear the night before. but Kavana pleads, and she reluctantly agrees to step inside while he looks for the book. He scrambles to light a scented candle and set the table. None of it softens her. When the address book turns up as one of the dishes, Helen snaps. She sees right through the whole setup. She storms out of the mansion and starts walking toward the highway on foot. Kavana chases after her. Distracted by him, she steps backward into the road. A passing car strikes her and rolls over her legs. Dr. Harrison learns that Kavana hasn't shown up at the hospital in weeks, leaving them without their head surgeon. Anne hasn't seen him since the housewarming party either. Harrison decides to pay him a visit. Kavana answers the door immediately and remarks on what a beautiful day it is. Harrison notices the phone is unplugged. He's come to ask Kavana to write him a recommendation so he can take over as chief surgeon. But Kavana says he still has until Monday, so there's no rush. Kavana insists he's living alone, until a loud crash from the next room gives him away. It's Helen, toppled sideways in her chair. She has no legs. Harrison stares. Kavana explains. When the driver hit her, hypoxia set in fast, and she needed emergency surgery immediately, so he performed it himself, right there in the mansion. Harrison wants to have her transferred to a hospital, but Kavanaugh assures him she's receiving excellent care, and there's no need. He also asks Harrison to keep this between them. Kavanaugh tells him not to worry about his personal life. He'd already planned to resign from the hospital so he could devote himself entirely to Helen. Harrison is welcome to the position starting Monday, and he'll have the recommendation ready. As for the girl, she's perfectly safe here. Helen is spiraling. She keeps hoping she'll wake up from this. "My legs are burning!" she screams. Later, Kavana wheels a chair into her room. She's furious. Everything that happened to her traces back to him, to his scheming. He counters that she ought to be grateful she's alive at all. Somehow, none of this stops him from continuing his courtship. He presents her with a rose. When his friend Dr. Lawrence shows up at the door, Kavana doesn't answer. He's stopped collecting the mail to give the impression he's gone away. Helen nearly makes it to the door in time to catch Lawrence's attention, but just misses him. Kavana similarly ignores all incoming calls. Helen tells him he's pathetic, and refuses to let him play caretaker. As a lesson of some kind, Kavanaugh wheels her out onto the front step in the rain, and invites her to scream for help if she wants. She pretends to calm down, then slaps him across the face, and actually starts screaming. Toweling off afterward, Helen informs him coolly that she never once enjoyed herself in bed with him. He was hopeless, clumsy, limp, forgettable. Kavana doesn't want to discuss it. Meanwhile, Ray has started looking for her. He asks the shopkeeper at her usual store to tip him off if anything comes up. That evening, Anne shows up at Kavana's. He cranks the music up to full volume, muffles Helen, and wheels her out of sight. Anne waits a moment, then moves to let herself in. She still has a key. Helen makes a break for the door, nearly reaching it, but goes unnoticed. Anne wants to fix things between them. She goes straight for him, pulling his trousers down. All of this unfolding directly in Helen's line of sight. For a split second, Kavana imagines it's Helen instead. And then it's over. Helen is quietly amused by the spectacle. Anne does her best to console him. A dejected Kavana asks to be left alone. Then the phone rings. Anne had switched it back on, and that's the last straw. He demands she leave immediately and hand over her key. Outside in the bushes, Ray watches the whole thing. Kavana calls the florist and orders yet another bouquet for Helen. The moment she gets the chance, she goes straight for the jugular. How long did he last exactly? 3 seconds. He must carry that shame with him everywhere. Just like the time they were together, didn't even make it to 2. Kavana retorts that if Helen were a decent person, she'd tell a man he was doing fine in bed. Out of love, out of basic respect. But what she feels for Kavana is nothing close to respect. It's contempt, plain and simple. It turns out his most recent flower order was sent to Helen's home address, a deliberate misdirection to throw off any suspicion. Unlike his captive, he's free to jump rope whenever he likes. Helen sits surrounded by flowers on all sides. Kavana rushes over to give her the medicine, and when he steps back, it turns out that he's chopped off her hands. She suddenly bursts out laughing, which unsettles him deeply. Kavana keeps up his exercise routine. Helen asks him never to leave her alone, while privately clinging to the hope that someone will eventually find her. She wishes Ray would just kill him already. Kavanaugh, for his part, is convinced no one could ever care for her the way he does. While Helen dozes off, he calls the pharmacy to order her medications. She wakes and calls out for him, and at that moment the phone rings. It's Lawrence. Kavana casually tells him he's living with Helen now. Lawrence asks how she's doing, and in a twisted little joke, Kavana holds the receiver up to her.
I'm a fucking prisoner here! You should see what he's done to me!
She doesn't play along. Kavana has already moved on, cheerfully saying hello to Helen on Lawrence's behalf. She wishes she could kill him. She's convinced her injuries weren't serious to begin with, and that he's the one who turned her into what she is now. Kavanagh produces a pistol and offers, with a dark kind of humor, to do her a favor and shoot himself. Though given her current situation, he points out, that wouldn't exactly help her. Then he snaps back to reality. He'd been imagining Helen, fully intact, arms and legs and all, reaching out to him and whispering things of an intimate nature. When he comes to his senses, the fantasy gives him an idea. He calls an escort and sleeps with her in front of Helen, a performance designed to prove what kind of man he can be. He carries on tending to Helen like she's a porcelain doll, combing her hair every day, reading to her, feeding her by the spoonful. On the bright side, she's been drinking less, though she's also become less of herself in other ways. One day, she tells him she wants to feel like a woman again. She asks him to kiss her. Kavanagh reads the room and decides to lean into the romance. He places an order just the way Helen likes it: a bottle of vodka, lemon juice, and pomegranates. The shopkeeper immediately calls Ray. Ray arrives at the mansion just as Kavanagh is kissing Helen. He's barely able to process what's left of her. Once the shock passes, he goes after Kavanagh, but Helen tells him to stop. She doesn't want him here. She wants to stay. Ray beats Kavanagh unconscious anyway and walks out. Helen screams that she loves Kavanagh and begs him to wake up. He does wake up, but not at home. He's in a hospital bed, having drifted off while Dr. Harrison performs surgery on him. Anne stops by and asks him to come see her afterward. As the elevator doors open, a nurse steps out. The same woman who, in his dream, had been the escort. Kavanagh walks into Helen's hospital room and kisses her hands. Her legs are right where they should be. It turns out he called an ambulance immediately after the accident and rode with her to the hospital. Everything else, the mansion, the captivity, the roses, all of it, was a dream. Time passes, but the surgeon is still haunted by it.